Hi, everybody. Mike Beer here. We have a couple of New York Stallion Series races on the turf at Belmont Park on Sunday. One division for the Colts, one division for the Phillies. These are three-year-old races going 7 furlongs on the Widener turf course, $150,000 purse for each. We'll start out with the first division. That's race number 5 on that Sunday afternoon card. This is a spectacular bid division. It is for the three-year-old Colts and Geldings. Field of 11 entered. The horse on the far outside, Willing to Risk It All, is main track only. So 10 entered for turf. And it's a pretty competitive field here of horses led by the number 8, 26 Black. This horse is the 5-2 favorite on David Aragona's morning line in this race. He's very lightly raced at this point, but he's come back for 2 starts this year after the layoff. He's won them both. He's looked good winning them both. He earned a very solid Beyer speed figure in his most recent start while defeating older horses going 6 furlongs. He's back in with the three-year-olds here. He's going to have to stretch out from 6 to 7, and he's facing what turns out to be a pretty good field for this kind of a race. But I do think he's the horse to beat. He's looked very good in all of his turf starts so far. The number 4 Vacation Dance is your second choice on the morning line at 7-2. That horse is dropping out of an open stakes race. He is now 3rd off the layoff. He was a stakes winner, though, on the turf last year as a 2-year-old. Gem Mint 10, the 5, is 4-1 on the line. Just switched over to turf for his last 2 starts. He's run well in both of those races. Even the number 6 Ramblin' Wreck has good turf form as a 2-year-old, and now he is returning to turf here off the layoff to make his 3-year-old debut in the spot. Really, really good field. I think it's a contentious field, and again, I do feel like the number 8, 26 Black, your morning line favorite's the horse to beat. Let's start off by looking at the Timeform US Pace Projector. Vacation Dance feels like he's at his best when he's able to make the lead. I'm assuming they will try to get there this time. Timeform US projects this race to be, sort of a faster paced kind of race. So we'll see if that works against Vacation Dance. They also have the number 3, 10 Cent Town, right up close in this race, showing speed. 10 Cent Town is making his turf debut in this spot. He has shown speed in his dirt races. It kind of feels like it's all about the break, though, for Vacation Dance. His most recent start, which was over yielding turf, and again, was against open stakes horses. He just didn't get out of the gate that sharply there, and didn't get anywhere near the lead. He still ran okay. I didn't think it was his best performance, but I do think he's better when he can make the front, and I'm assuming they'll try to get there in this race. Let's start off down on the rail. Number 1, Vince the Prince. He's run 4 times so far. He has yet to win a race. He enters this spectacular bid division of the Stallion Series as a maiden. I just thought he was pretty hard to like in this race. I actually don't mind them cutting back. They went a mile, 2 starts back. They went 9 furlongs last time. Personally, didn't think he ran particularly well in either of those races. I think cutting back to 7 could certainly help him. If nothing else, he came off the layoff this year, back in April, going a mile and a 16th at Aqueduct. He ran an improved race that day. They put him on the lead. He couldn't hold on at a price. He wound up settling for 3rd. It was an okay performance. He hasn't gotten better since then. Maybe cutting back in distance will help him a little bit here. Javier Castellano's going to take them out. He's been riding in good form here. Power Attack is the number 2. This horse has credentials to be a major contender in this race. He's going to put blinkers on here for his 2nd start as a 3-year-old. He came off the layoff back in the middle of May over the inner turf course here, going 6 furlongs. It was a fast-paced sprint. 26 Black was also in that race. 26 Black was really impressive. And Power Attack just got outrun right from the start in that race. He had a clean trip around there. He never really got involved. He didn't put in much of a finish. Maybe he just really needed that race, however. He actually ran pretty well, more than once as a 2-year-old, once they switched him over to the grass. He broke his maiden first-time turf in a short race. I thought he ran pretty well in his next start, the 5-furlong Tyro at Monmouth Park. He was only 2nd best there, too, a really good horse, but I thought he ran fine. And then they stretched him out for the one and only time in the now, a $500,000 race over there at Monmouth Park. He did make the lead in there. He was really, no match in there. Once he got challenged in the stretch, he got a little tired in the final furlong. He couldn't hold on for a piece of it. It wasn't a terrible performance, but it wasn't a great one either. I don't think the 7 furlongs is a big deal for him. And I think he's a horse who will probably want to get forward in here. Again, he just didn't really show any speed off the layoff last time, but that pace was fast. Maybe he gets closer this time, and it makes a difference. I would demand a price if I was going to bet him. 10 Cent Town is going to make his turf debut here. There's, a little bit of pedigree, I suppose, to handle this surface. His dam was a synthetic horse, but she was, an okay kind of runner. She has dropped a turf winner already from her prior foal. So maybe this horse will improve switching to the turf. I think he's going to have to. And that pace projector that we just looked at probably works against him in this spot. Vacation Dance is the number 4. This horse was pretty good as a 2-year-old. he debuted at Saratoga in one of those short sprints up there. He wound up winning that race at a fair price, and he actually ran a lot better than it may even look on paper there. Another race where he didn't break that sharply. He was wide on the outside all the way, but he just kept coming, got himself into contention, stayed gamely through the stretch, and got the job done. It was a really good performance. He came right back out of that race in the grade 3 futurity going 6 furlongs over at Aqueduct. He ran really well again. That was a race that came down to a blanket finish with 5 of them hitting the wire together, but Vacation Dance was right there at the end. 82 buyer that day. He came back and won the Atlantic Beach in his next start, 86 buyer, right to the top in that race. He was basically loose on the lead all the way around the track there. It was an easy win. It was a short field. I don't think it was, the greatest performance in the world, but he was only a 2-year-old. It's only his 3rd start. He earned an 86 buyer. It obviously, suggested that he had a good amount of ability. We've seen him twice so far this year. So far, he hasn't improved yet as a 3-year-old. Off the layoff, though, he did face some older horses. He didn't make the lead that day. They tried to track it from the outside, and he just didn't really have a finish. I wasn't taken with that performance, and then obviously he didn't run well again in his most recent start. Not that it was terrible. It was an open stakes race, yielding turf. He did make a move to contention, but he was really no match at the end of that race and didn't finish that strongly either, going the 7 furlong distance. Maybe it was the yielding turf, and maybe if he gets back over firm turf, it'll make a difference. He's clearly a contender. I'm not sure I would go too short on him as far as price goes, though, but I'm a fan. Next up is Gem Mint 10, the number 5. Again, this horse has really improved since he switched over to the turf courses. He has the pedigree to handle turf. It was no surprise that when they switched him over 2 starts back in the beginning of April at Aqueduct, no surprise that he got the job done there. He got a really good trip in that race. But he stayed on really gamely, sort of wore down the leaders in the late stages, took over inside that final furlong. And got clear under the wire. Good performance there. Came right back in his next start. They stretched him out to a mile. I got to say, it was another pretty good performance. I personally don't think he had some kind of big excuse there, but that was a pretty fast pace, and he was close to it. The winner, who I believe was favored that day, came from way back and closed that thing down at the end. This horse was much closer. He fought his way to the lead inside the final furlong. You could tell he wasn't going to hold on, but he tried really hard. It was another good performance. He earned a solid figure for it. He gets to drop back a furlong here. He could fall into another really good trip in this race, and his trainer, Ray Handel's just on fire right now. There's plenty to like about this horse. We'll see what kind of price he is. I could certainly use him. I just don't think he's another horse I don't think I would take too short a price on, because this is actually a pretty tough race, I think. Ramblin' Wreck, the number 6, is up next. This is a horse who's going to make his 3-year-old debut here for trainer Danny Gargan. Won his turf debut going long last September as a 2-year-old. He looked really good winning that race. He got a good trip, but he just powered to the front at 10-1, got away from that field. I thought that was a really impressive win. His next start over yielding turf in the grade 2 Pilgrim against a much tougher field, and that was just too tough for him. I didn't think he had some kind of huge excuse as far as trips goes. That field was just too tough for him. He came back for one more start on turf at the end of November, the Central Park, another open stakes race. He wound up finishing 4th at a big price that day. He ran better than it looks on paper. He did not get a great trip in that race. He was running at the end. It took him a little while to get clear, but once he got clear, he ran on. That was a good performance. I think it was an underrated performance. He's just got to be ready off the layoff. I think 7 furlongs is a good distance for him. I love his running style for this race, and he might even be a fair price in here, even with Iran Ortiz taking over. We'll see how they bet it. This horse is pretty good, though, and I think he's actually better than he looks on paper in this race. It's all coming together. Is up next, the number 7 for trainer Phil Serp. He's off of a maiden win going a mile in his most recent start. He got right to the front in that race, and he dug in really gamely to hold on at the end. There were 3 next out winners behind him. They were catching him at the end of that race, but he went right to the top in there. I didn't think it was a particularly slow pace. He ran really well that day. 2 starts back, he made it close with your morning line favorite for this race, 26 Black, but 26 Black had some real trouble in that race and probably won it easier than that margin suggests. It was still a fine performance for It's All Coming Together. He's a horse who I think you could consider in here. He probably can't make the lead in this race. I think this pace is going to be a little bit faster, but he'll be forward, and he could certainly take another step forward. And here, your favorite is up next, the number 8, 26 Black. He's just the horse to beat. 1 start as a 2-year-old last year at Saratoga, miserable trip in that race, and wound up having to settle for 3rd. We didn't see him again after that. He came off the layoff. The race that we were just talking about, that It's All Coming Together, was also in. This horse just sat in behind the leaders. He just had to wait and wait and wait for room. It took him forever to come clear, but he finally did. He pushed his way to the outside and into the clear in the final furlong, and then he came with a strong finish to close it down. Here's his most recent start. This is, again, against older allowance horses. going 6 furlongs. This pace was fast. This horse was never that far away from it. He comes 3 wide into the clear at the top of the stretch and just flat overpowers this field. He's going away at the end. Really strong performance, 81 Beyer speed figure. You know, he's got to get 7 furlongs in this race. And I suppose that could be, you know, some kind of an issue for him. But I don't know. It's just one of those things where I don't feel like, you know, the 7 furlongs is really supposed to bother this horse. Sometimes it's tough. It's a tough stretch out for some horses to handle. I don't see why it would be a big deal for 26 Black. I think he's the horse to beat, but he's also probably going to be the favorite. And this is a pretty tough field that I think he's stepping into here. The Thrill of Victory is up next. He was in the It's All Coming Together race 2 starts back. He was off the layoff there. Had a fine trip in that race. Could never really make an impact on it. Was no threat at the end of that race. For his next start, Mike Maker dropped him down into the maiden 40. He had a pace in front of him that day. He came running. He closed it down pretty easily as the favorite. They're going to step him back up now. He's going to have to improve again, although it's at least worth pointing out that he made a second career start in the same race where Ramblin' Wreck made his turf debut. This horse finished a decent third that day. So it's not like he has no talent at all. He's just going to have to improve against this field. The final horse entered for turf in this race is the 10 Jackson Heights. We'll see what he can do. I mean, he started out his career, his first 2 starts were on the turf, and he didn't run well in either of those races. He did get better when they switched him to dirt. The only win so far did come in a stakes race going the 7 furlong distance, but it was a race that had a really strong pace, and he came from last, and he closed it down in the very late stages. I thought he ran well that day, but he hasn't, you know, really run that well in any of his starts since then. So his connections are going to now switch him back to turf and maybe see what happens here. It's his second start off the layoff, second start as a 3-year-old, and he just made no impact on the Mike Lee last time. His pedigree is a little interesting because he's really bred for turf on the dam side. But Union Jackson, his sire, so far anyway, just has been a terrible turf sire. So we'll see if this horse now getting back to turf as a more experienced horse and perhaps just a better horse at this stage of the game. Maybe it'll make a difference and he'll run a better race here. If nothing else, he should have some pace to close into here. We'll see what he does. He does have a race in him that I guess would give him some kind of a chance. That's the field. We won't talk about the main track only horse. 10 entered for turf. Really good addition, I think. I do respect your morning line favorite in this race, 26 Black, and I do think he's the horse to beat. But I put him second in here because the horse I want to bet in here is Ramblin' Wreck, the number 6. He should be a fair price in this race. I liked his turf form last year as a 2-year-old. I like this distance for him, and I think he can get the right trip in this race. We'll see what kind of price he winds up going off at. To me, all he has to do is be ready off the layoff. I went 6-8 in the first of the 2 Stallion Series races at Belmont Park on Sunday. This one, the spectacular bid division for the Colts and Geldings, goes as race number 5. Your approximate post time, 3:10 Eastern time. Good luck.